Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought I would give my opinions on the rank 1 of Italy, and kind of do this going forward for the majority of nations, and just starting off with Italy because it's the newest nation when it comes to ground vehicles, so the idea of this video is just to go preliminarily through each of these vehicles, giving my general opinions on them, and then if later on, I want to review one specifically, I'll go a bit more in depth in it. So the first thing I want to point out is a few what I would class as bugs with some of these vehicles. They may not be bugs, they may be intentional, but if they are intentional, it seems a little bit odd to me. So the first one is with the M1340s, the 1, the 2, and the 3. So, if you actually take the M1340s into battle, something you will realize is that the machine gun on the top, it decides that it wants to be an anti-aircraft gun. So you can see, you can't actually fire it straight. This is the same on the M1341, the M1342, the premium gift version, and the M1343, which is sat here. All of the other M14s, M15s, all of their machine guns actually point straight, which is why I believe it's a bug, since they are the same machine guns with the same mounting. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, as you can see with this one. This one actually points straight and fires straight. I don't understand why the first guns would only point upwards, because since the mounting's the same. The next issue is with the M1139. So the M1139, as you can see, it's an interesting machine, but one thing makes it stand out over everything else, and it's this little tube here. This is the optics port for the gunner who runs the 37mm Vickers, and his optics are 8 times to 16 times. Now, to put this into perspective, of how actually, large this is, let's have a look at a top tier vehicle for the Italians and look at their optics that we can find. So as you can see, 8 times 16 times on the OF40 Mark IIA. Then if we have a look at the Centauro, which should have something pretty similar, it doesn't actually show it for the, there we go, 8 times to 12 times, right? So, for the M1139, if we compare it to other nations, when we look at their optics, so let's just say Crusader Mark III at a low BR, I wonder if we can show optics. I don't even think this thing has optics. I mean, it has a little thing there, but it doesn't let you know. Basically, it is very weird that this rank 1 vehicle, this M1139 from pre-World War II, actually has the optics the same as the OF40, has the same optics as the Leopard 1, and actually has better optics than the whole of the British tree, including the Challenger Mark III, which has only up to, where's the optics port? There it is, 7 times to 10 times. So you're telling me the Challenger Mark III from the 1990s has worse optics than this M1139. Yeah, it just seems a little bit odd to me. So this seems to be bugged as well. If it did have these crazy optics in real life, fair enough, but it's actually kind of a detriment to the vehicle, since you don't really ever engage at ranges which are this long at battle rating 1.3, and also your cannon is only 640 meters per second muzzle velocity, so firing at ranges is very, very hard to do. I've got a feeling that's a bug. Hopefully it's fixed. The other one I do want to point out, which isn't strictly a rank 1 vehicle, but it is close to, is the 7518 M41, and this is once again another machine gun issue with the vehicle. So as you can see, I'm pointing straight. Look where the machine gun fires. You see how far it is? So we're aiming at the Tetrarch. The machine gun does not line up with the sight. And I don't know why it does this. I believe, once again, it is a bug. If it isn't a bug, it just seems to be a bit of an odd idea. So let's say we point this way this time, and you can see it is way off where it's supposed to be. So yeah, the machine gun is misaligned on this vehicle, so that needs to be fixed as well. And if it is supposed to be misaligned, it would be nice to know why it's supposed to be misaligned. The last one is this one here, and I think this is just a stat card issue, or maybe it's just me being a bit silly. But on the 4732L40, which you see here, it says it has negative 12 degrees of gun depression. My general opinion, which may be wrong, but just from my experience in the game, is this does not have negative 12 degrees gun depression. So that's how far it goes. This is what it looks like. And for me, I feel like this is a lot less than negative 12. I think this is more maybe negative 6, negative 7. If we look at it from the straight line as going out from this vehicle. This might be because the gun itself is raised, and it's not, looking straight all the time. Like this is it looking straight on the perpendicular. But if you look at here, to me that just doesn't seem like a negative 12. And I'll give you an example of a vehicle that does have, negative 12, or at least around negative 12. And we'll do it with, I believe, the Cromwells. Yeah, the Cromwell has negative 12. So this is the Cromwell 1 with the 57mm. And it has, as I said, straight negative 12 gun depression. This is what negative 12 gun depression looks like. So you can see, I think there's an issue with either the stat card or the machine itself, where it is not showing the correct gun depression, which means that if somebody grinds this vehicle out, it's kind of false advertising in a way. But then again, there are a lot of issues with a lot of these stat cards. So let's go through vehicles one by one with the Italian tree. How does it compare to the meta vehicles of each other nation? So first of all, the meta vehicles for me, when I look at rank 1 for each nation, the Americans is pretty much these, the M3 Stuarts. They have a good gun, they have decent armor, they're very fast, so they work very well. And then when we look at Germany, it's the Panzer II, the Flak Panzers, and also some of these later ones, but generally these are too high a BR for you to see in the Italians, or at least very scarcely going to see. So basically Panzer II, which you see here, and the Flak Panzer, auto-cannoned machines. Then for the Soviets, the T-60 and the BTs at lower levels are the meta. And then for Britain, it's kind of slim pickings, but basically the A-13s is all you've really got from the 1 to 2 BR. Then the Japanese, the Type 94 is the best vehicle for the Japanese, and the Chiha as well. The others are not the best, mainly because of their penetration. And France is laughable, but I suppose the good vehicles, or the better vehicles, are the H-39 and the R-39, but they're still not very good. The B-1 BIS is the first vehicle where you actually feel like you are doing something for the French. So those are the meta vehicles. Generally, you either get speed with a quick reload of a decent gun, or what you get is an autocannon. So how does this fit in with Italy, with the general meta? So they have a few vehicles with cannons on them, with belts. So the AB-41 is one of them. It has a 20mm Mod 35 cannon. You can find it at BR 1.0. And what you find with this autocannon is, now, the default belts aren't the best. 40mm will go through a decent amount of targets, especially at BR 1.0, but it won't go through all of the targets. And this is a problem that you may run into quite a few times with the AB-41, where you'll be running around and you won't be able to always kill a target, but once you're fully upgraded, which won't take long, because you're at rank 1, you get access to this round here, which is a HVAP API-T belt, which gives you 64mm of penetration. So once you get that, this thing is incredibly good at killing other vehicles, and is very similar to what you see from the Panzer II-C. Now, depending on the map that you're on, because basically, the way that it's working in the game right now with wheels, which obviously the AB-41 does have wheels, it's a wheeled vehicle, on some maps you'll be faster than specific other vehicles like the Panzer II, the T-60, such as maps with hard terrain, so, basic, anything which isn't like heavy mud or snow, you're generally pretty nippy in these things. Like you can see in this in this type of scenario, you know, you're quite fast, so therefore you can run around and you can be pretty useful with the 20mm, because if you stay out of this mode, you can actually be really, really accurate with it without even having to think too much. The reload is okay on it. The main thing is to understand is with the 8 shots, you should be able to kill a target with them at your level. And if you are struggling to kill a target with it, then it is an issue with aiming. So the reload isn't too much of an issue unless you have multiple targets attacking you at once, which generally will happen at rank 1, but the reload is okay. It's satisfactory, right? So the HVAP is great once you are fully upgraded. And another thing that this has is, as you can see, it can move all wheels simultaneously. This means that moving is incredibly good when it comes to the wheels. The only issue, though, is you have to do it while actually you have some momentum behind you. So turning, as you can see at speed, is very easy to do, so maneuvering is easy to do. But if you are at a standstill and you try and move, it takes a little bit more effort and it's going to take a while to get around. And once again, on snow maps and stuff like that, your maneuverability is really going to take a hit hard in this machine. And once again, negative 12 degrees of gun depression, which you can see is very useful. I generally use this as a kind of tank just to run at people with, because of the gun being pretty stable. And, you know, the speeds of around 40 kilometers an hour, you can run around the map quite easily and just, you know, take pot shots at targets and be able to hit them from decent ranges. And if you miss, you know, you have you easily have enough belts to be able to, you know, be able to make sure to make up for the losses that you miss. So overall, I think the AB-41 is great. The autocannon is wonderful, the reload rate is good enough, and the maneuverability is good. But once again, on heavy terrains like mud, snow maps, you're going to struggle with the maneuverability angle. But just shoot on the move, run around, don't worry about your armor. Your armor's useless, but a lot of other tanks at rank 1's armor's useless, so you don't have to worry too much. The upgrade to the AB-41 is the L640. This is a smaller vehicle, and pretty much what you're doing is trading armor for speed. Your speed for armor. So you get 30mm of armor on this machine. You also have a slightly lower profile than the AB-41, and you're also getting some tracks. So on snow terrain and stuff like that, the L6 is better. On terrain where you need to hide, so forested terrain and stuff like that, if you want to be a bit more sneaky, then the L640 is better than the AB-41. But I think for overall enjoyment and overall competitiveness, you're going to want the AB-41 over the L640 just because of its maneuverability. Like, the L6 is fun. It has exactly the same gun as the AB-41, so it gets exactly the same upgraded round as it with the HVAP, which, as I said, is very much meta at rank 1 in War Thunder. So it's got good on that side of things, but it doesn't have the maneuverability, which I think is much more important than 30mm of armor, which is only going to stop specific French rounds and nothing else, especially since this is straight flat. It also has a crew of 2, where the AB-41 has a crew of 4, so it is harder to kill the AB-41 unless, you know, you shoot it center mass, kill the driver, the commander, and loader with one hit, but it's much easier to kill this than it is the AB. The only thing about the AB which makes it less survivable is the artillery, coming in and hitting it. But overall, the L6 is good because of the gun once again. It's just worse, in my opinion, to the AB-41 unless you're on like a snow map. The next one is the reserves, which are the vehicles that you'll play first. Now, the only real difference between the M1340 and the M1343 is you're always going to want to take the M1343 out first because it has half of the reload of the first one. I have no idea why. Everything else is exactly the same on these, apart from this one, stock, has a 3.8 second reload, whereas the M1340 has a 6.5 second. So you're always going to want to take this one out first, because, well, there's literally no reason not to. They both have 4 crew, and the crew themselves, once you lose a loader, you do lose a lot of reload time in these machines. So, yeah, that is a bit of an issue, and the armor is not really that great on these machines. If you want to kill these machines, the best place to shoot is right here, where the 30mm plate is, because if you pierce that, you're going to hit the loader, the commander, and you may hit the driver and the machine gunner, but the main thing is you take out the turret, and also you have a chance of going through, hitting the engine and stuff like that. But I have had a decent amount of fun in these lower tier, medium Italian vehicles, and the main reason is because their guns are good enough, and once they pen, they actually have a decent amount of explosive filler, which seems to do a lot of damage. So you end up penetrating and doing a lot. The difference between the rounds, the standard round pens a bit more at 0 degrees, and at 30 degrees, it pens a bit less than the Granata Perforante. I would actually say it's better to take the upgraded round, just because losing that little bit of penetration and gaining a lot at angles is very useful, even against, lower tier vehicles. This gun is good against pretty much anything that's meta, apart from the Stuarts, which it can sometimes struggle against. It also struggles in an up tier, like if you get into a match with some B1 Bisses, the B1 Bisses are going to tear you apart without even thinking. But if you're in that state, you're already not in a great position. The engine power isn't wonderful on these machines, but it is good enough to get you into a position where you can use that supreme gun depression that you see here to great effect. And with a 3.8 second reload, which you can get down to ridiculous numbers if you upgrade your crew, you can have a really good time in this machine. But there is literally no point in using this one over this one unless you have completely fully upgraded this one and you want to get the research bonus from getting the tiers of the M1340. So if you are starting off the Italian tree, use this one, you'll have a much better time, and you just have a better time. Then you have the M1441, which takes the ideas of the M1340 and upgrades it to 1.7 without any real additions. So the main thing between these vehicles is the upgraded engine, and that for some reason means that you are 2 BRs higher. So from 1 to 1.7, you have everything else, which is the same as the M1343. So you have the reload, you have the gun, you have the gun depression, which is great, and you do have a slightly better engine, but the armor's exactly the same. So you just end up with a vehicle which now you're at a much higher BR, and you have much more chance of going up against more enemies which can easily pen you and are also faster than you, and crucially, you are going to struggle to pen. Just remember, right, so this gun, we can actually do a protection analysis on this. So, M1441, right? Let's go over to the B1 BIS. The B1 BIS is 0.3 BR higher than you. You are going to face it quite a lot in this machine, as I have had to do, which isn't very fun, and so therefore, let's go through it. So, let's use this round first, so 500 meters. There is literally nowhere. Oh, wait. You can get through that very small turret ring, and you can orange the gunner, orange the commander. Doesn't that sound wonderful? So you literally cannot pen this machine anywhere on the front with the standard round. With the secondary round, same deal. The only place where you can pen is right here. And even then, you're hurting the gun, you may hurt the commander a little bit, but you're not doing a lot, right? You're not doing a lot with this round. Look at the side. Look how ridiculous this is, right? This either shows how good the B1 BIS is, like you can pen the turret ring, which is at least a saving grace, but this either shows how good the B1 BIS is, or it shows how bad the gun is on this thing. You can't pen anything on it. You can't pen its arse or anything, so for me, it's this is the problem with this 1.7 machine. Like, it's nice to have the upgraded engine. I don't think the engine necessarily means that it should be at the BR that it is. So if we have a look at the Stuart as well, which is a tank that you'll see quite a lot, because it is a vehicle which is, predominant in this. You can see that you can get through this front plate easy, you can get through this area easy, which is good. There are a few issues with the turret, but you can get through this quite easy as long as you're aiming. But if you shoot center mass, which is where you should pretty much shoot, you can see you can do pretty well. So you don't have any issues with that, But against stuff which is a little bit more armor, you're gonna go through without, having to, without them even caring, to be quite honest. So that is a bit of an issue with the M1441. Overall, this is one of the machines I struggled with in rank 1, because I found that even though I could get a lot of shots off with the 47mm, I didn't feel like it was good enough to kill everything I was facing. And when I was running into the situations where I would run into, let's say, one of the premium heavy tanks at rank 1, or ran into something like a B1 BIS, or ran into something with a bit of armor behind it, there wasn't anything I could do in this, and I would just have to run away. And its engine, even though improved, is still not the best. So for me, it wasn't a good machine to run through, because whenever you have a machine where people can easily pen you, but you can't always easily pen them, it doesn't feel nice to play, right? You still can use the gun depression to great effect, though. Obviously, with its 15 degrees. So, the next one is the AS-42. Now, the AS-42 came out, and for the first thing on the dev server is that it had people sat on these seats, which was kind of hilarious, because I was like, how the hell's the gun gonna turn? And then on top of this, it also had a stabilizer for this 20mm. Now, they've taken away the stabilizer for the 20mm, which I think is a kind of a saving grace, but because of the AS-42 being quite, it's not the fastest machine, it is a beautiful looking machine, though. I think it's one of the nicest looking machines in the game. You can still shoot on the move with relative accuracy. I mean, it's not the best, but it's it's okay. The main thing is, this is supposed to be your AA of the first tier, and since we've already seen a few vehicles which have good autocannons to them, such as the 20mm from the AB41 and the L640 here, and they have pretty good gun elevation at 20 degrees as well. Not as good as obviously the S42 at 90 degrees, which it can't get to, by the way, so that needs to be changed. But the there is already some options to kill planes with it, and the main issue with the AS-42 is if you use it as an AA, which I don't think should be its primary purpose if you are using it, it's very easy to kill from a plane, right? You've got 2 crew, and in realistic, all you have to do is just knock out one of them, and then the crew's knocked out. And since there is literally no armor on this machine, which is above the gun, taking out crew inside with even just a 7.92 is very easy to do. So this should not be used as an AA. It should be used as an attack vehicle. It should be used as a tank destroyer, just like you do with a flak panzer or a Gepard. Is it called a Gepard nowadays? It might be called something different. Let's have a look. The Flak Panzer 38, sorry. So like the Flak Panzer 38, or like something like the 72K Gaz, these things should be used, or the AC Mark II AA, which they've actually increased in BR, so yeah, that might not be as good. But something like the Type 94, these should be used as tank destroyers, just because they have great penetration, great rate of fire, and as we talked about before, autocannons are the way to go at rank 1 if you want to do a lot of damage very quickly. So this also gets access to the PZGR-40, which is the HVAP rounds, and therefore it can pen 64mm, going through everything that you can face. Just to put this into context, we'll go back to the B1 BIS and show you. So if we go back to the good old BISy, which is kind of like my metric of if a lower tier tank is able to, if it can pen this, it can generally pen anything, that's the way I see it. So, S42, let's get the PGGR40. So you can see, it still struggles to pen a bunch of the areas, wow, 207. Let's just make sure, yeah, there we go. Really can't pen the turret ring? Why can you not pen the turret ring? Or maybe I'm just not looking at it right. But yeah, it still struggles to have a look at some of the areas, but it is still better than what we saw before. It isn't just a straight, now no damage to critical parts. At least now it says penetration is not possible. And you should be able to pen the turret ring. I don't know what's going on with that, unless it is only showing the other round. Yeah, I think it might only be showing the APIT shell for some reason, since... Let's just do that. Put it down to 100. I mean, it can technically pen it at 100, right? That seems a little bit odd. The turret ring again. But yeah, basically the penetration on this round is better than what you get from the normal tier, the normal stuff of this tier, such as the 47mm, which is on these medium tanks, and because of that, you can use it just to batter people over the head. And if you want to use it as a machine, what I would do is, if you want to run a 1.3 lineup, so you run it with the L640, you run it with something like the M1139, I would probably say the L3 would probably do you better though, or just one of the medium tanks. You run it with that, you run this as first spawn, you walk onto a cap, or you walk onto an area, and you use it just to kill as many tanks as you can, and then from there, you spawn into a secondary vehicle or a plane and, you know, actually play the battle properly. So the AS-42 should be used as a shock weapon, going in first and trying to nail as many people as you can, and then, you know, the actual party starts. It is a really nice and really fun vehicle, and it has a lot of attributes which I like. It would be nice if it had a bit of armor on the top just to make it useful as an AA, but, you know, you can't have everything. The next vehicles are the tank destroyers. Now, my experience with this line of tank destroyers has not been good so far. The only one I've actually enjoyed is this 7546 M43. I've thought that's pretty good, but the other one's not great. So let's start with the L333. This is the smallest tank in game now. Very, very diddy, and very, very interesting. So the L333 has a key problem with it, and it's its armor penetration. So its armor penetration, 40mm, but the main thing is you're not normally engaging at those, so your armor penetration is more around, you know, like 30 to 35mm, and the way that this gun is, you know, it's not mounted on a turret or anything, so you always have to be facing the enemy when you're firing, so once you shoot that initial round, they are going to know where you are, right? It's as simple as that. So you have to do damage with that initial round, and because it's only a 20mm anti-tank rifle, you're not always going to do proper critical damage to it, and therefore you're going to be sat in a situation where you can't do a lot, right? You can't do a lot, you do a little bit of damage, and then you die. Like, a lot of people have seen this as, you know, oh, it could be the new M22. No, that's not the case. The M22, the reason why it works really well, got a lot of speed behind it, got decent penetration on a high-velocity gun, which means that up-tiering it, you know, it means you can kill top-tier vehicles. This thing, with its penetration and its speed, is not that. It's just a useless vehicle, which you want to get past as quickly as possible. Now, I made an actual video on the L333, and the idea is with it would have been nice to give this thing scouting, because right now, in its current state, the way it works as a tank destroyer, it's awful as a tank destroyer. There is no reason to take this over the AS-42, the AB, well, anything else in here, apart from maybe the M1139 or the 4732, but out of these, like the medium tanks, or basically the turreted stuff is the way to say it, there is no reason to take the L333. You have worse gun penetration, you have less survivability, because once anything hit you, it's going to take out a crew, because you're so small. A lot of people will say, you know, it's small so people won't be able to see you. Well, one thing I've also noticed with the Italians, and this is just something that is common with a lot of these Italian tanks, the camouflage stands out on the majority of maps. So on desert maps, it doesn't stand out too much, but on snow maps, on you know, just normal forest maps or jungle maps, these camos stand out like a sore thumb. And that means that you get in a situation where you're always going to be seen first because you are basically painted bright yellow. And this is an issue that goes all the way up to stuff like the 105, where you've got like this yellow, green, red, which you may think, you know, is quite good at hiding you. No, it isn't. Basically what it is it's still just very bright colors, which make you stand out from, what's going on. Like, you can make it a little bit worse, camouflage condition, and you can increase the scale, which can make it a little bit better for you. Maybe change the rotation slightly so you got a bit more green on the front, something like that, just to make it a little bit better. But it's, you stick out so much with these vehicles. It is insane. The only ones you don't is like stuff like this, because the turquoise color normally blends into the ground in the sky that you see around, whereas, this color, it makes you stand out. So you don't have the sneaky breaky ability. You do not have the speed behind you. You do not have the gun. You don't really have anything. You just have a small tank. And as we've seen in many games, just being small doesn't help, Being small just means that sometimes somebody won't spot you, but that's it. I think if you gave this thing scouting, it would give people a reason to play it, but over everything else that we have at this BR, there's literally no point in playing this at all. When it comes to the M1139, the M1139 has 3 crew, and it has a weird configuration where it doesn't have its main gun at the top, kind of like with the M3 Lee, but at least with the M3 Lee, the top gun that it has, or at least, the Grant or the M3 Lee that's in the standard tech tree, it has a 37mm. This 37 can generally pen stuff. It can do some damage. A lot of people see it as the main gun, because the 75 is not always as reliable, especially with the way that it's mounted in this. And I would actually kind of agree with that. But anyway, the 37 is useful. With the M1139, what you have is a set of 2 machine guns in the top here, and therefore you have the 37mm Vickers Turney 3740, and you only get 1 round, and it pens less than 40mm. Why is it that these supposed tank destroyers have worse penetration, or the same penetration, as these things, right? As the non-tank destroyers? Like, the way, when I think of a tank destroyer, and when I think of a useful tank destroyer, what I'm looking for is a machine that gives me more penetration or more damage than the average machine, right? So when I look at the German tank destroyers, the Panzerjäger 1, it's a 4.7, it has a 47mm pack, 90mm of penetration. If I look at the 1.7 Panzer 3, 65mm, and it has a low velocity 37, then we got the 75 low velocity once again. It does get access to heat, though I believe, which gives you 100. But it has low velocity. So Panzerjäger 1 has a higher velocity, has decent penetration, has good penetrating power. There's a reason for me to take this over these, right? When I look at these tank destroyers, there is no reason to take them over their counterparts. And this is something that runs into rank 2 as well. So when we go into the rank 2 video, I'll talk about this too. But with the M1139, it has a worse gun than all of these vehicles, apart from it is slightly better. It's not even slightly better at range. Like, it's still worse at range. So, there is literally no reason to take this thing unless, you're a bit of a masochist. So, with the X-Ray, taking out the guy, the commander, is very easy to do because you always see this thing coming. If you know about, like, the Americans, so one of the issues that the M48s and the M60s have is you have, like, this cupola, right? And what used to happen with this cupola, it happens with another vehicle I'll show as well, is people would use this, they would shoot this before you come around the corner, and the round, if it was APHE, which was normally what you were facing, nowadays it's more about heat FS, but it would bounce down, it would kill the gunner, it would kill the commander, then you could just, ramrod it and, have a good time. And that's how you would use the cupola. Nowadays, it's quite hard to do that, or at least they've made it harder for rounds to bounce down in that fashion. So, instead, now it's just a beacon to tell your enemies that you're coming, right? Before you see this M48, you know what you'll see? You'll see this damn cupola, because it will be coming over a hill, and therefore you can set up for it. This is the same issue the M60s have, and this is also the same issue which is exemplified by the fact that it's not a turreted vehicle in the Tortoise with this bloody thing here. This massive weak spot, which when you hit, it actually bounces down and kills these 3 crew, which is one of the most annoying things in the Tortoise, because the driver is sat here, right? So if you hit that and bounce down, kill the driver, then then you're stuck there to hit it again and hit it again and hit it again. It makes the tortoise annoying as hell to play. So yeah, when you have these raised machine gun cupolas, let's call them, it is only a detriment, because it tells the enemy when you're coming. It tells them, they can shoot and get a free hit on somebody. It also generally means that your gun is sat in a position that is inferior to it. Like, if this gun was here and the machine guns were here, I mean, it would be exactly the same as any other, Italian medium tank, but at least it would mean that you could get a shot off when the enemy can see you. Now, you're just in a situation where you have to take a hit before you can shoot, right? You basically have to hope that they kill your commander, then you push up with this gun, which doesn't handle well on the move, by the way, as I'll demonstrate here. So, and also with the crazy optics, as I said, the optics is kind of a detriment to being able to to engage at short ranges, which is obviously a rank 1 where you end up actually engaging. But anyway, so you have the turret that goes around all the way. It has 2 machine guns, completely useless at rank 1, because they don't pen enough. It's only useful against specific vehicles, such as the AA vehicles that are tank destroyers at rank 1 that we talked about before. So, let's say you're going over a hill, right? Here you go. Let's put it in cruise control 1 just to make it easier. Right. You've been hit in the top of the turret because the enemy sees that you're coming, because they see your big fat turret. Kills the commander. You want to shoot an enemy. Halt. Whoop. Alright, now we're going to shoot. Do you see how long it takes, right? So let's actually do it without, using cruise control 1. So the gun is not stable, I think is the best way of putting it. And then, okay, so we need to stop to shoot. Whoop. And ready. It takes a good second for the gun to fully stabilize, right? At least a second for the gun to fully stabilize for you to be able to shoot. And for me, that is not really good enough, especially for a gun that doesn't pen that much. It is much better to just use the autocannons or to use the medium tanks. I would actually say use the autocannon machines first, and then use the medium tanks, and then just try and research these and just not use them, because it is not a fun experience. It does have a good reload rate, but it's still worse than the medium tanks. The gun depression is okay, but the turret, as I said, is the issue. The last one is probably the vehicle I've had the worst experience in. So this is the 4732 L40. If we have a look at my statistics, let's see. 12 to 11, so, it's alright when it comes to statistics. I've gone even in it, so I'm happy about that, as a person who doesn't really see themselves as a good tanker. So, L640, what you do is you take off the turret, but crucially, you take off the turret in favor of the 4732 gun, the Mod 35, which is the same gun you find in here, and also these reserve vehicles here. So you take the medium tank gun, you add it to the L640, you take off the 20mm, and also you forget to put a roof on it, and you also don't mount it in a turret. Give me one reason why I take this vehicle. Right, let's just put it in a lineup to make this easier. Right, here we go. So, give me one reason why I take this piddler over this, right? This has a turret, which gives you a hell of a lot more, chance of really doing anything. A turret in War Thunder or any tank game is so much better than something which doesn't have a turret. And that's just because of basic aiming. You're able to corner peek easier, you're able to set up positions easier, you're generally a little bit higher, which means that you can set up your gun in slightly better positions. You don't have to worry about always facing the enemy all the time. You don't have to worry about angling your armor as much. All of this stuff, because you can do it before you start shooting. With the 4732, you can't do that. So there's no turret. It's also got worse armor. It has the 30mm of armor, which is standard on the M14 41, but at least the M1441 does have areas it can bounce, whereas the 4732 doesn't. On top of this, it has 2 crew compared to the 4. That means that if you take out one of these crew members, this machine is dead in realistic. Also, some genius decided to leave the canvas off and not put any armor on the top of it. What this means is planes eat you alive because of where your crew is situated. Your gunner is situated here and your driver here, therefore shooting down is very easy to do to kill the gunner. On top of this, it has double the reload of the M1441. So, you have the same gun, you have way worse survivability, you have worse reload, you have worse maneuverability, because remember, your engine, 68 horsepower, 2500, M14 125 at 1900, I suppose it might have slightly better maneuverability, but let's just say the same maneuverability, just to be fair. It has way worse gun depression, because there's no way that this thing has negative 12, unless that is seen as where the standard 0 point is, which might be true, to be honest, but then the negative 12 would make sense. It has the same gun, it has worse turret rotation speed, it doesn't have a turret, it doesn't have anything compared to the M1441, but they're the same damn BR. Why do I take this? Give me a reason. Oh, it's smaller, so it's harder to hit. We've already talked about how the Italians love the banana armor look, so it's very easy to see this damn thing. I think when it comes to it, this will be one of the least used vehicles in the game, along with the M11, just because there's no reason to take it over any of the counterparts, and that is the problem. If this thing was lower BR, like it was like, well, 1.0 to be quite honest, then maybe you take it, right? But you at 1.7, as a tank destroyer, there are vehicles you cannot pen, and you need a tank destroyer that's going to be able to pen everything. And as I said, why not just take this instead? So yeah, for me, my overall opinions, the autocannon stuff is fun. Like, if you want like the funnest lineup, and by the way, the M1340-2 is basically exactly the same as the M1343. So it's got the same reload, everything is the same. The only difference is the gun depression on this is negative 10 and not negative 15. So, very similar. It's a good pick, and very nice that they gave us it as a gift premium. But yeah, if you want to have the most fun with Rank 1 Italy, you're on the AB41, the L640, and the AS42. You take the AS42 out first, you do as much damage as you can. Then, depending on what type of map you're on, if you're on a winter or a muddy map, or a map with, let's say, heavy terrain, which, you know, which is quite deep or whatever you want to say. But basically, you know, winter or muddy, you take the L640. If you're on more of a map like Italy or Mozdok, where there is not a lot of mud, you take the Auto Blinder, the AB41, and that's how you do it, right? So that will be your most fun lineup and also your most efficient lineup. You don't touch this line at all until you get to this tank here, but we'll talk about that next time. And with the mediums are satisfactory. They are okay, but they're just not as fun as these ones. And I think Rank 1 should be more about fun, because you're trying to get used to a tree, you're trying to get into it. And also, the L640 leads on to the AB43, and also some of the fun tank destroyers that we have in the Italian tree. So for me, you know, it's a no-brainer that we go for these two and the AS42 instead of these. Overall, my general experiences in Italy have been positive so far, apart from the tank destroyer line in Rank 1, which has been very, very depressing and very hard to get through. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.